is up, guys? Today we're going to be jamming into some Fang with Verdance in episode 3, I believe, of Clash Season 2. So in this matchup in particular, what I kind of want to do is just play the mid-range game and deny fealty as long as possible, then reset it with the card Scour, and just kind of buy tempo that way, because if they're pitching for their cards, they're actually getting less value than we are. And that 3 copies of Scour in the main deck, that's kind of a lot of their purposes for this matchup, because if you don't have the Scours to reset it, it actually makes the matchup quite hard. Scour is also particularly good into decks like Vincent, um, where you can blow up their Malefic incantations, which are the key enablers in their deck. Otherwise, we have stuff like Mental Block, Shelter, and Sink Below, as well as, of course, Rootbound Carapace as DRX to stop on hit marks. And then we're trying to burn our opponent down with stuff like Burn Bear and Light Up the Leaves, which are very efficient and hard for our opponent to deal with because warriors don't deal with Arcane very well. It's pretty infrequent we're throwing an attack, but if we are, it's probably Plow Under or Felling. We are probably almost definitely not throwing our CNCs in this matchup because our opponent's playing Crown of Providence rather than Nullrune Hood, which is the other hood I quite commonly see. So we want to go first into Fang, because then they get less fealty off turn 1 and less potential damage, whereas we can get a Burn Bearer or Light Up the Leaves off, go from there. So immediately looking at this next hand, I know I can block 10 with just these 3 cards, and I can just fire back 6. If I can keep this Destructive Aether I would like to, because every card we keep before it goes down is worth more later, because it means our opponent's at a lower life total when they do eventually hit 3 fealty. So here our opponent's going to come in for 1. This is going to get pushed to 4, so I'm going to not block and wait to see what our opponent has. If it's just an on-hit mark effect, we can sink below, maybe sink this away to try and find something more impactful. And then we can always block 6 on the second one, which I find to be a good breakpoint because it's quite frequent. They can pump it to 5 or 7. Yep, so here our opponent's just getting vanilla damage in, so I'm actually going to leave this because I'd rather make the inefficient play and pitch the Destructive Aether rather than blocking with it if we can. And our opponent is likely to have something that marks on the second chain link now, so we just want to leave this. So opponent's thinking on the Vigor token, which is interesting. So they do make it, so they're going to have to pitch a second card for this, which is good for us because it means we just have to go at the sink below to deny what's going on. So we can actually just no block this and wait for our opponent to make a play again. Opponent's going to Brave Forge brace this as well, that makes sense. So I'm actually inclined to block with the CNC here. Because our opponent either fires off this last card and then they don't get value out this resource and the card, or they do fire off and then we sink below. They still don't get the value off of this. Cool. That's exactly what we wanted to happen. That was a pretty good turn 1 for us. Our opponent's still on 1 fealty. We're not marked. Now we're going to be able to light up the leaves, pitch for Waning Moon. Our opponent's going to go to 26. We've opened up a 10 life lead, and we still have to sink below in Arsenal. If I had to guess, I think that last card is a card like for the Dracai, potentially, or the Arachne card that marks on attack if your opponent's on Arachne. I forget what that card's called. Hunt to the Ends of Wraith, I think it is. Which is pretty good for us here. So now we're going to have quite a lot of space. Our opponent's going to go to 24. So now we only have to get 15 more damage in for our opponent to be in Stormstrider's range. This is not the best hand for us, so we're probably just going to block out, maybe sink below away this twice and try and find something more impactful. We could throw the Felling, which is not the worst idea. Here I'm going to say no blocks because I want to block with the sink belows proactively, and our opponent is pretty likely to maybe juice this to 7 if we say no blocks, and then we just sink. Fire and Brimstone. It's a good card. It's not particularly great when our opponent's not online because they have to pay for the swings in weird places, so we're actually just going to take the 3 to start with. Don't wait to see what our opponent does, because these can come in multiple times, so I want to wait for them to do something with marks before we do anything impactful. I think I'm leaning towards just like trying to filter for arcane spells here because the cards in our hand are very inefficient. Ideally, if we have like a blue plus like a pulsing ether life on top of our deck, that's probably the most efficient thing we can find. Um, Again, I'm just gonna say no blocks here. Wait to see what our opponent does. Opponent's gonna Endear Devotion, so they're gonna get an unconditional fealty. We are going to sink here, just so that we can get rid of this Fruits of the Forest and try and drink something impactful. So there's the blue that I was talking about. If we could find a spell now would be good. So we're probably going to block with the Felling plus the Sink below. And then we'll just E-Strike, draw a card on our turn. Opponent swings for the Dracai. It's interesting. I think we just want to block 3 here, send 7. Or we just block 4, E-Strike. We're in a kind of weird spot here, because this is like not an ideal hand. I think we're actually just going to say no blocks, sink below the Felling away. Try and draw something impactful. I guess we're now just going to send the Plow Under. It doesn't really matter that the Plow Under is coming in for 2, because the E-Strike coming in we can just save for another turn. And if we throw the Plow Under, we can snag this away and get a Decompose in. So now our opponent's going to lose this. It doesn't interact with Crown of Providence because Plow Under happens on the attack step. So our opponent's going to... So we're going to Decompose. Our opponent's going to lose their arsenal, and then they're still going to have to pay for their attacks next turn as well. I think the worst thing for us is if our opponent has a Pledge Fealty in their arsenal, that would kind of suck, because then they would just go to 3 Fealty and we would have made a very inefficient play for no reason. I think the other line we could have taken on this turn was just like Arcane Twining, pitch the Plow Under for Waning Moon, but I think just making our opponent block with something here, just in case we do have to send physical attacks later in the game, is good. And I think it's perfectly fine for us to Arsenal the E-Strike, because by arsenaling it, we can always Crown of Providence it away if there's a more efficient play to be made. Yep, so we got that 2 block out of Brave Forge. Doesn't really matter because our opponent has such a huge fridge, its physical damage is kind of irrelevant this game. So we'll just Arsenal the E-Strike. So we got a Burn Bear plus a Felling. Opponent has to pitch an entire card here, that's pretty good for us. We're going to say no blocks here. So opponent's going to swing for 2. This is either going to go to 4, or they're going to give Mark to their second dagger. Which means that if we block it, we get a lot of good value, because we don't. So they're just going to choose Mark, yep. So we're going to become marked, but they're not going to have their 3rd fealty, so they're still going to have to pay a card to swing. So I believe we might actually be doing... I think we do still just want to block. I think we're going to end up blocking Felling plus the Crown of Providence. Because the max our opponent can pump to is 5. So save a bloodshed. Yeah, so they're threatening 5 on hit, draw a card, so we're just going to block 5 like this. Sink away the E-Strike in Arsenal, try and find another Burn Bear or something like that. We're really just trying to dig through all of these. Heartbeat is interesting. I think we're going to Heartbeat, Waning Moon, Burn Bear. And just keep our life total a little higher. We're actually going to leave with the Burn Bear here, because we can respond to a lot of the weird shenanigans with Waning Moon, although I don't think it really matters in this matchup. Then we do this. Opponent goes to 16. Very close to the end of the game now on our side. We just got to get like a spell or 2 in. This Scour has come up just pretty much at the perfect time. So we can just block with Armor, the CNC, and the Rootbound Carapace, and then just play the Scour on our turn. Our opponent resets to 3 fealty. We get even more time to find more arcane spells. I think there's a rules Interaction. No. Thinking about something wrong, but so I'm actually going to say no blocks here because their opponent either has to double react on the first one, which means they lose points. So we're going to let that happen, and then we're going to rootbound carapace it, because then we get to decompose, our Buckskin becomes turned on for future turns, and our opponent has to play a second react on this first chain link as well. So we get to go to 5 Earth cards. I typically haven't seen this matchup get to a point where like we're fully online, so we'll just like be able to forget about the Buckskin now. Our opponent I'm also wondering, am I just meant to like play Twining and then Waiting Moon, because then our opponent goes to 13, and then if we draw any Pulsing Ether life off the top, our opponent goes to 9, so then they just like die to any burn bear. So I'm gonna do, yeah, I'm gonna do this here. And I think we are gonna do that Arcane Twining play, because it means we're literally any 2 burn bears or Pulsing Ether lives. And now I think we're gonna do the Scour play because our opponent has 3 fealty. And obviously we just want to tax them for playing a deck of mostly reds. So now we're going to play Scour, x equals 3. First time I played this matchup, I went combo into it, and I like got slapped, and I was very confused about like what happened. Opponent just chose to take it. In reality, what they should have done is just like destroy all the Scours in response. That way they don't take the arcane damage. Here we're probably just blocking with the NC, scouring again, and then activating Waiting Moon. Because Scour is probably going to cost 2. So we could actually block with the CNC. We could mental block something, because then we get the Ponder token. And that helps us dig for this burn bear to finish the game. And ideally we want our opponent to hit us here, because we want them to make Vigor tokens with this blue, or fealty tokens that we can get extra value out of killing. Not like literal value, because as I said, our opponent should just crack them in response, but yeah. So opponent Blistering Blades, yep, we take 4. Our opponent's going to get a fealty from the mark. Hopefully they Vigor if they don't think they can get to 3 fealty this turn, which is perfectly fine. There's an argument we should mental block now in case our opponent just chooses to Arsenal. Because obviously we just want that Ponder token to go 1 card deeper. Pulsing Ether Life was also like a perfectly good card for us to try and find right now. This is good, our opponent did the Vigor token as well. I'm trying to work out if this extra damage is ever worth it over the Ponder token. I think being able to target all the fealty is also going to be really important, so if our opponent can swing multiple cards. So opponent's going to Brave Forge. Maybe they have 2 blues in hand. But surely they just play the Relentless Pursuit then. So I think we're just going to bulk with the CNC here, and then just Scour Waning Moon. But yeah, denying our opponents the value on all their equipment by just not ever sending physical damage is like a really key part of this matchup that makes it a lot easier for us. Because of the fact that like our opponent just like negs on value by like a really solid chunk. Scar Tissue is not great for us though, because they get to keep the mark through what we're doing. But if they pitch for the Vigor token because they have like another blue or something here, that's pretty good for us. Our opponent's still going to take 4 damage if they don't blow up the fealty in response. Oh no, they blow up the Vigor token, so now we're going to deal more than enough, and then we just have to sit around playing Burn Bear Simulator. There's 3 left in our deck, so we're essentially just going to be waiting around to draw one of those. So we'll scour this away. Our opponent's going to get taxed because now they don't have the resources to pay on their turn. So And then we'll just pass the turn. They go to 8. If we draw like a Pulsing E for life. So now we can just block with these 3 cards, Arsenal Pulsing E for life. Or even just keep 1, throw the Pulsing E for, put our opponent to 4, and then end literally any 1 cost off the top. Ends the game. We're just going to say no blocks here, because we kind of want to just keep these, because then our opponent just dies to any arcane spell off the top because of Striders. Yep, we'll take 2 there. Opponent's going to get 2 fealty. Yeah, this game kind of shows exactly why Scour is in the list. It really just like turns this matchup from like kind of a hard game into like child's play a little bit, because you just taking away their fealties just makes the game so hard. Again, our opponent should be at a higher life total right now. I'm just gonna pass here and see what our opponent does, because we can just double D-react and we don't mind just throwing both these out. Yep, so our opponent's gonna go to 5 here. We're gonna Carapace. Fortunately, we don't have anything to decompose, and then we're gonna shelter. We're leaving our arsenal empty because because of where we are in the game. If we just draw the burn bear and arsenal it, the game just ends. But sometimes you can draw burn bears in like weird spots where you don't have the resources to pay for them. So there's a chance that we could go to next turn. We could have like 3 reds in hand plus a burn bear. Need to arsenal it, and then go to the turn after that, and that just like leaves us open to more possibility of not just like dying immediately. Yep, so we hit the burn bear plus the blue, so we're gonna wait for our opponent to do the maximum amount of things, so that we know there's less cards in hand, and then we're gonna crack the Storm Striders, burn bear for 6 arcane damage, and then Waning Moon on top. So we're going to be 5 over what our opponent is, which I think is exactly how much they should have denied value-wise by cracking those fealties earlier, so just goes to show it didn't actually end up impacting the outcome of this game. We will block like this. Yep. So we're just going to take all the damage first, because our opponent could have something like an Oasis Respite or something like that. And we just want to play around the maximum ability that they could have something like that. And here we're going to crack now, because our opponent has the Save a Bloodshed draw trigger on the stack. And it sounds kind of weird to like just be min-maxing here when we've like pretty clearly got it, but like this is kind of the difference of like the corner case games you win versus the games you don't. Yep. And our opponent dies. So you look at our values here, like our values are not particularly high, but we just got a lot of value based on the Scours killing things, as well as the fact that our opponent just can't block Arcane efficiently. The thing about Fang is like, even if he does choose to play like multiple AB pieces, because his deck is like so many reds, like I think last time I was playing Fang it was like 44 reds or something like that. Your opponent will like throw a burn bear, you'll have 4 reds in hand, and then you have to choose between literally skipping your turn, and still taking some arcane, or just like no blocking it. So it just ends up being like very inefficient for the Fang to play AB. Typically, I think Null-Rune Hood is the only piece that I think is correct. Or Null-Rune Boots, I think either of those is fine, potentially both. But I think, honestly, it's just a really hard matchup for them now that there is 6 copies of Burn Bear around. So yeah, you just want to play blocky on the Verdance side, wait for you to draw your Burn Bears and your Scours, come through occasionally, just to slam out those fealties and make sure that you deny your opponent the value of getting to play with Fang's hero ability, because without his hero ability he's actually doing very subpar damage. But yeah, hope this helped, and please give us a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. There'll be another 2 episodes in the series, I believe, and yeah.